When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Microsoft Azure. Turn your ideas into reality with an Azure free account. Get everything you need to develop apps across cloud and hybrid environments, scale workloads, create cloud-connected mobile experiences, and so much more. Discover what you can create with popular services free for 12 months. Learn more at azure.com. That's AZURE.com. And sign up for a free account to start building in the cloud today.
What's good, boys and girls? Two-Footed Podcast Extra, our news and gossip little nubbin of a pod. So, what news do we have today? Ronald Koeman has said the book is closed on Steven Bergwijn's international career after he decided to move to Saudi Arabia, which, I mean, we've seen other players go over there and still play for the national team, but Koeman says he will not consider Bergwijn, who has joined Al Ittihad yesterday on a 3-year contract, 2 years after rejoining Ajax from Spurs. I'm not surprised. I think Koeman's going to take a harder line than some. I mean, Koeman's got players he won't pick, and when he does have them in the squad, he won't play because of some perceived gripe he has against them. But I'm not surprised he's taking a hard line on this one at all. Luis Suarez has announced his international retirement. He spoke about it as the impossible dream to play for his country. 17 years, 142 caps, and a record 69 goals. One of the greatest strikers of all time. I think undeniably the greatest Uruguayan striker of all time. The greatest Uruguayan player of all time. Now, look, the people might bring up people from 1930 and 1950. I can't speak on them, but I think Suarez is just a different class. I think he's a top 3, number 9 of all time. Obviously part of that Uruguay squad that won the Copa America in 2011. And it was just always the danger man in that team. Unstoppable. Absolutely unstoppable at his peak. Sensational. One of my favourite players of all time. I know he's not everybody's cup of tea, but for me, I think he's outstanding. Erik ten Hag apparently still has the backing of the Manchester United board, despite back-to-back defeats in their first 3 games. He best turn things around fairly quickly, or I would imagine that support will disappear. I mentioned it in the earlier podcast today, but Angelo has joined Al Nassr for 19.1 million. Angelo Gabriel. It's a £6.1 million profit of what Chelsea paid for him a year ago, despite him never playing a game for the club and a disappointing loan at Strasbourg. Now, it's clear why this has been done. It's to help them fill their books. It's just such an odd approach. It's such an odd approach. And they're trying to claim it can be profitable. In situations like this, maybe, but we know that there's connections between Clearlake and the Saudis. So how much of this is actually playing within the rules of the game, and how much of it is just using back channels to dig a club out? UEFA are certainly not going to take too kind of a view on a lot of what Chelsea's done. They've already said that the selling of the hotel to themselves is not going to fly. There was talk they were going to try and sell the women's team to themselves, but I think the Premier League shut that one down as well. Now they're, selling players that have never played for them at nearly 50% profit to a country where the ruling powers have links to them. I think it could start to get messy for them. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the next few years we see a City-style investigation where all of their accounts are pulled apart. A sole interesting piece here, why free agents could be gold dust to clubs. Now, obviously, the window is closed, but you can still buy players, or you can still sign players, rather, as long as their contracts expired at the end of last season. So the following is the list of players currently in a contract with valuations above 5 million. Adrian Rabiot, I think he would make a lot of sense for a lot of clubs. I think he's still a very good player. He's just a pain in the arse to deal with. So that's the issue with him. Otherwise, there's no question he would have a club already. Andre Gomes is on a free. I think Portugal, Spain, he fit well there. Pretty much any possession-based side in those leagues, I think Andre Gomes makes sense. Anthony Martial is still without a club. Now, he seems destined for Saudi Arabia to me, but there's probably a club in one of the top 5 leagues that looks at him and thinks, he's only 28. We know that there's a lot of talent there. Maybe we'll take a flyer on it, you know, if we can give him an incentive-based contract where he has to play and has to perform, then maybe it's worth doing. Memphis Depay, obviously super talented and still a starter for the Dutch national team. So I think he'll want to stay in Europe after seeing what's happened with Bergwijn. I'm surprised he's still out of contract, that nobody signed him. There was talk that he could go to Seville, but that didn't pan out. We'll see where he lands. Yusuf Yassiki, who was at Lille, formerly of Trabzonspor. He's a talented player, can play a couple of positions in midfield. Wissam Ben Yedder is at the end of his career at 34. I wouldn't be surprised if he lands in the Middle East. Joel Matip, 33 years of age. He's got a torn ACL that he's working back from, which I think explains why nobody has signed him as yet. Alex Telles, formerly of Manchester United, he's now 31. He's a solid backup left back for a club in a decent league. Anton Morenchuk is a decent player, could perform a midfield role for a mid-table club in Germany or Italy maybe. Sofiane Boufal, tricky left winger, formerly Southampton. He's very inconsistent. He strikes me as someone that'll end up in the Middle East. Dele Alli, I think, is technically contracted to Everton on a training contract. He's certainly training there. He's been training by himself a bit as well. He's still only 28. If I'm a good championship team, I'd probably take a flyer on Dele. If I could convince him to join, I'd probably take a flyer on Dele because I still think there's something there with him. But you'd have to put him in a good environment. Iker Muniain, I don't understand why he left Athletic Bilbao. Maybe they couldn't come to terms. I think he might sit out till the end of the year and then go to MLS. Mats Hummels, we'll see where he goes. There's a number of different clubs have been linked. He does seem to want to stay in Europe. There's been recent talk that he could end up at Roma. Recent talk that he could end up at West Ham. Don't think he really makes a lot of sense for West Ham, given they've already got 4 centre-backs, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Marlon is a Brazilian centre-back. He's all right. Aaron Bupenza, meh. Robert Skov, I do like, the Danish winger. Leandro Lopez, an interesting midfielder for probably a championship level team, would benefit from a player like him. And then Yusuf Attal, who's a very exciting attacking right back, fell out with Nice over his support for Palestine, and that kind of ended their interest in him. There's also Steven Alzate, and if I was a championship team, I would be snapping him up. Absolutely, without question, I would snap him up if I was a championship team. Dennis Pryatt's an interesting one. Rafinha's interesting. That's pretty much That's pretty much your lot. We'll go to break, back with the gossip. See you in a sec.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Right, welcome back. So we'll quickly run through the gossip. Fenerbahce, Besiktas and Eyüpspor are all interested in signing Kieran Trippier after Al Ittihad also tried to sign him. There's a lot of conflicting reports about what he's going to do and what Newcastle's intention is with him. It wouldn't surprise me if he hung around until January and then left, but I think the better thing for everybody would be for him to leave now. West Ham are interested in signing Joel Matip and John Egan as they look to the free agent market for a new centre-back. Matip's got the ACL. I think Egan, at this point, the Premier League is a bridge too far. Manchester United are unlikely to let Christian Eriksen leave this month. I think they've probably left themselves a little bit short in midfield. Like, if Mainu was out, there's no one else really that can just ping a ball around. Mainu's not a great passer either, but Eriksen can add something to that squad. Newcastle will try again to sign Anthony Elanga in future transfer windows. It wouldn't surprise me if we got to January and Elanga and Guehi were back on the radar for them. I think Elanga is who they pivoted to after it became clear that Chelsea weren't going to let Medeski go. Ajax have verbally agreed a loan deal with Southampton for Kamaldeen Sulemana. Truthfully, that's where he should have gone when he was leaving Nordsjælland. He should have gone to Ajax. Kudus had gone there on the same pathway and done really well. I think Ajax is where Sulemana would have done. He wasn't overly convincing for a lot of his time at Rennes. Super talented, amazingly fun player to watch, but incredibly frustrating. Ajax makes sense. Liverpool and Arsenal are among the clubs closely monitoring 18-year-old Palmeiras central defender Vitor Rias, who is outrageously talented. Like, genuinely outrageously talented. I think he's right up there with the best young players in the world. Now, I have a feeling he might become a defensive midfielder. Just a feeling he might become a defensive midfielder rather than a centre-back if he comes to the Premier League. I think he could be very, very good there as well. Everton turned down the opportunity to sign Axel Disasi and David Datro Fofana in a swap deal for Dominic Calvert-Lewin. If that was a swap for both, for Calvert-Lewin, they're mental to have turned that down. I would have taken Datro Fofana and a bit of cash for Calvert-Lewin. If I'm getting Disasi, then maybe they just felt they didn't need him. He's not great. Like, he's good. He's solid. He's a bit error-prone, but he's explosive. He's got pace, something you don't have in your centre-back line. I think if that's true, I think that's ridiculous that they've turned that down for a fella that gets them 3 goals a season. Manchester City's 18-year-old winger Joel Nadala is having a medical before joining PSV Eindhoven on loan with a conditional obligation to buy, which I assume will be if he plays a certain amount of minutes. Romanian forward Yanis Hadji is set to reject the chance to leave Rangers for Steaua Bucharest. So I can understand that. I mean, if he was to move back to Steaua, even though, like, it's probably the right move for him, it would still be seen as like he's failed outside. I think there's a bit of shame there. Obviously, his dad is one of the best players Europe has produced in the last 50 years, but he's never going to live up to that level. But he's proven he can play in other leagues. He was really good at Rangers under Gerrard, but he's fallen out of favour in recent years. Didn't see much of him for Alaves last year. But like the Dutch league, the Belgian league, I think they'd be more favourable for him rather than going back to Romania. And then finally, Stuart Armstrong, who left Southampton at the end of last season, is closing in on a move to Vancouver Whitecaps. That would be a really good move for him. Really good lifestyle change. At 32, I think he'd go and do very well at MLS. He's a good player. He's proven quality in the Premier League and the Championship and the Scottish Premiership over the years. Can be a really good goal-scoring option from midfield as he proved at Celtic, but I think that's a good move for him. I really do. Right, that's going to do me for today, folks. I will see you all tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.